Hello, everyone. Welcome to my show, Curryup Startup Podcast, a podcast to spotlight world class Asian entrepreneurs, C suite executives, and leaders who provide insights from their personal journey to inspire you. And this is your host, Priyanka Komala, joining you on the 54th episode of Curryup Startup Podcast. And to our listeners who are tuning in on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn, do continue to follow me, Priyanka Komala, and our Curryup Startup Podcast page on LinkedIn for your LinkedIn live notifications. And also follow us on our YouTube channel, our Twitter channel, and your favorite podcast streaming platform. Today, I have with me a special guest who I see personally as an ally for women in tech. And this person is none other than Brian Thomas, the CTO of Carson Technologies, who's joining us from Kansas City here in the US. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Priyanka. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Brian. Brian, I see you as somebody who's always focused on helping others succeed, especially women in technology. And I've seen you do that personally for me. And I felt Brian needs to be on the show to talk about his meteoric rise as a C-suite leader, as well as provide advice to young professionals to grow their careers in technology and talk a little bit about the future trends in technology. Are you excited about this?
Absolutely. Yes. I think your platform gives a voice to those looking to grow their career in technology or executive leadership. And you're doing a great job. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Brian. So let's quickly check in who our listeners are. We have Nikita Parmar from Chicago. Hey, Nikita, welcome to the show. To the others who are listening to us on various streaming platforms, do drop a quick hello and where you're from so we get to know who you are. With that being said, just a quick reminder to our Curryup Startup Podcast listeners, we have one free mentoring session with Brian Thomas. So to grab your chance, please drop in a question at any time during this podcast episode and get a chance to talk to Brian and get his mentorship. And he's such a fabulous guy to get to know, so I can say that. All right, Brian, with that said, let's get started about who Brian is. Brian, I see you as someone who has had several senior leadership roles, including the Chief Information Officer role, CIO, Chief Technology Officer, CTO, and a healthcare executive in the Fortune 500 healthcare and public sector spaces. Brian is known for his innovative work and as a social influencer. He's also the founder and CEO of Coruzant Technologies. All right, Brian, you have a very impressive profile. Let's get started with, did you always dream to be a CTO?
No, that's a great question. And thank you, Priyanka. Really, I loved technology, whether it was a video game or writing some code back in high school. I won't date myself, but learning to code on a Commodore 64 was really my first passion for technology. But over time, I felt that I could give more to an organization by leading a group of technologists versus just being an individual contributor. And as much as I'm passionate about technology, I'm even more passionate about people. And so that really excelled my growth over the years, being a first-time supervisor, manager, director, and then eventually a CIO and now a CTO. So it's been exciting.
That's pretty impressive. Tell us about Carson Technologies. What is it about and what's your vision?
So several years ago, great question. Several years ago, I wrote many articles for different publications, including CIO.com, the bigger IDG network. And I was asked to facilitate a tweet chat, and one thing led to another. And before you know it, I started getting featured in different magazines like Harvard Business Review. And that's not what I was trying to go after, but I loved this social platform. I grew my social following personally because I was trying to build a brand around who I am as a CIO. And sure enough, 70,000 followers later, it has really benefited me. Obviously, it took some work, but I really love the idea of running a digital publication. And so that's why I launched Coruzant Technology. There's a lot of nuances and restrictions if you want to write for, let's say, a Forbes.com or the bigger, IDG. So I decided, I want everybody's voice to be heard, not just, an executive from Fortune 500, right? I want a technologist to be featured on my platform. And so it's really an all-inclusive, it's global. I've got 25% of my guests on the platform are actually international. So it's really inspiring. And so that's my passion. What my passion is really what drives me to do what I do, love what I do, and founding the Coruzant platform.
That's pretty impressive, Brian. And I see Coruzant as an amazing platform to bring in diverse leaders from different backgrounds and focusing on the wisdom that they can provide to your audience. So that's amazing work. And I also love your podcast. To our listeners, you need to check out Brian's podcast. Brian, do you have a word to say about your podcast as well?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for being a guest on, it's called The Digital Executive. You can find it on all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, you name it, it's there. So yeah, appreciate the plug there, Priyanka.
That's amazing. And we'll have links to the podcast as well as part of our show episode notes, Brian. Now let's talk about your career as a CIO for Johnson County in Kansas City. How was that experience being a CIO in the public sector space?
Sure, it's a lot different. Those that work in public sector know that public sector is a little bit different, the way the organization is obviously laid out, but also their mission to support the community or serve that community that they support. I cut my teeth mainly most of my career in the healthcare space, usually private sector, or I even spent some time at a Fortune 500. It's like a night and day difference, but I can tell you the thing about being in public sector is things are very consensus driven. Things might take a little longer to get done, but the outcome, the satisfaction, both from a taxpayer perspective and the stakeholders or the employees that are actually working on a project to find the end goal, the satisfaction is much higher.
That's pretty cool. Thanks so much for sharing that experience. Before we delve deeper into your career advice, I'm going to acknowledge another listener of ours, Janani Rangarajan, who's joining us from LA. Hi, Janani. Welcome to the show as well. And just as a quick reminder to our listeners, as well as Nikita and Janani, please drop in a question for Brian, and here's a chance to win a free exclusive mentoring session with Brian. All right, Brian. A lot of my listeners to the podcast are young women, people of color, as well as young software engineers. They're always looking at how do they build their brand, how do they ace their technical careers. What are 3 strategies that you can provide to our listeners on who are aspiring to be executives?
Absolutely. I think the main thing is, are you willing to, and not at the cost of a relationship, obviously, but are you willing to roll up your sleeves and jump in? What I found early on is if you're first in line for volunteering for a project, and I'm not asking or telling anybody that they should be, a teacher's pet, for example. What I'm saying is the people that want to grow their career need to show that initiative and do it in a very strategic way. You want to build relationships at all levels. The one thing I would say that would stand to that is obviously integrity. Is you never want to use somebody to get to your end goal. That's number one. But be present, be a leader. I don't care if you're an individual contributor or a first-time supervisor. You still need to stand out as a leader. And again, treating people the way you would like to be treated is really how I excelled in my career. I would say those are the big things that stand out. But be willing to do the hard work. Be willing to roll up sleeves. And also, and I've learned this for many years, and I do this today, and currently am mentoring 2 people right now. But at one point in my career, I was mentoring 5 people, and it gets a little busy sometimes, but that's how I get fulfilled. And when you're in a corporate job, you're not working a typical 40-hour a week, right? You're working much more than that. And so sometimes the hours can be long, and sometimes you get down and out. So giving back, like mentoring, allows me to be fulfilled. And when I'm fulfilled, it's not work anymore. It's more of, like I said, more of a passion, which I'm very passionate about, building relationships and being around people. So if that would help any, I would say just be present, be a leader.
That's amazing advice. As a nice segue, we have a question from one of our listeners, Janani Rangarajan, who's asking, what is one of the biggest challenges when you're leading teams and being seen as a leader?
You have to set aside your personal feelings or what people are thinking about you. A lot of times it's easy to go down that path, and as you know, your mind will start to race, and before you know it, it's a slippery slope. If you're doing things for the right reasons and you have integrity and you're transparent with your team, you can go really, really far. And again, trust is the foundational item for any leader. You've got to have trust, number one. So that's a great question. Again, I would just say start out with trust, be transparent, and don't worry about what people are going to say. As long as you know you're doing the right thing, you'll be in a great space.
That's a very interesting observation, Brian. And as a seasoned executive, it's very well thought of what you said. But tell me this, what do you tell yourself personally to stop overthinking when you have these kinds of leadership challenges?
Well, if you look around the world and you see people that may be famous or have accomplished things, they all had their challenges as well. But the difference between them and a lot of us is they decided to make a decision in their mind that is not important for me to be focusing on things that will not help me achieve my goals or achieve success or bring value to the customer or their employees. It's just, again, you have to change that question in your mind immediately as those thoughts come in, and you just need to focus on getting the job done. Again, for me, I'm more of a person that thinks about the other person or the employee before I even think about myself. So that is what's gotten me through a lot of things is I'm very unselfish. I look at how can I help the customer, the employee, my staff before me, and that takes away all the stress and that focus of thinking, well, what are people thinking about how I'm doing, So that's how I got through it. But I would say if you could set those aside, those thoughts, it takes some work to practice. You'll do fine as a leader. You really will. But always look for a mentor yourself. You need to grow as well. Just because you feel like you're doing a good job doesn't mean you're doing a great job. You need to continue to push yourself to be better.
Pushing the envelope is always a constant challenge for leaders. And thank you, Janani, for that wonderful question as well. And it gives a chance to understand, the real Brian.
Thank you. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the technologies. You are a master digital transformative expert, is how I see you, Brian. What are some technologies or trends that you see as the future? Is it artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity? What's your perspective?
Nowadays it's all tied together, but I would say on the forefront for sure, machine learning or the bigger artificial intelligence absolutely is here to stay. In fact, there is some truth about, hey, what's happening to our jobs. Well, we know this. The human race is so amazing how we can overcome challenges. Look at the last several thousand years, how we grew when we met challenges. What did we do when the Industrial Revolution came? Well, we're now in that fourth age, right? That fourth Industrial Revolution. And and what I learned when I was attending MIT from a great MIT economics professor is even if certain jobs that are mundane and repetitive tasks, yes, some of those jobs will go away, but us humans will create new jobs, new industries, new verticals, that there will always be jobs for humans. And what's really neat about machines, and I know there's a lot of skepticism about them, I think that machines and humans together can do a better job than just humans alone or humans alone. Machines and humans together will make our world a better place. And I honestly believe that. There's a lot of things that we're doing in healthcare, especially to better patient care, better diagnosing of certain diseases, which we couldn't do years ago, are now being done by machines. And so I think we need to embrace this, obviously have ethics behind it, but we need to embrace the technology. There's others out there, obviously, that are very prevalent. Cybersecurity is really big right now, and obviously blockchain, there's now use cases in every industry. But I would say embrace the technology, learn about it. It's here to stay.
That's very insightful. Thank you so much. Are there certain resources that you would suggest for our young professionals to look at when they're looking at any of these different technologies?
Certainly, if you're very young, you're in high school or college or beyond, somewhere in that, and you want to learn more about that, I would definitely engage your career counselor at a college. But there's a ton of resources, and gosh, at the top of my head, I read some of them on a regular basis, but there's at least 40 publications just on artificial intelligence and machine learning around science. And some of them are specific to manufacturing or healthcare. But there's a plethora of information out there. If you wanted to dive into that technology, I would absolutely try and get your feet wet. Go out and try a programming class and see if you can develop code. Python is one of the many languages that is being leveraged now around predictive modeling for machine learning and analytics, right? Just dive in and don't try to figure out your career in one day. I thought coming out of college that I knew what I wanted and I had to make $1 million right away. It's not like that. Get some experience. You've got time. Get some experience. Roll up your sleeves. Try different things. Enjoy it while it lasts. If you need to switch up your career or do a different type of education to augment what you're already doing, then go for it. I've done a lot of different things in my career and gone back to school as recently as this year at MIT just to embrace the technology. So that's what I would share.
Thank you for that. And you're a classic example of a leader who's always on the constant learning mode. Education never stops, right?
That is correct. You've got to, if you're not learning, they say you're dying, and I don't know whose quote that was, but that's true, and you will get stagnant if you don't learn. So it's something that you constantly need to learn.
Thank you for that. And I want to quickly acknowledge Janani's comment. She wanted to thank you for the helpful insights behind what it takes to be a leader. So thank you, Brian, and thank you, Janani, for that comment as well.
Yes, thank you.
One of the critical aspects of leadership is, again, apart from the technology, the learning, the perspectives that you bring to the table, is your soft skills. How important are soft skills, and what are some advices that you would give to our listeners on enhancing your soft skills?
Yeah, just like we talked about, the learning is an evolutionary process, and you've always got to be learning. Soft skills are just as important. And if you want to be a leader, you've got to learn about the human part of things before you learn about the technology. So what I mean by that, we all talked about IQ. Well, as a leader, you need to embrace EQ, right? That emotional intelligence. It's so important to pick up a book, listen to a podcast, download an ebook around leadership, how to lead, how to show people, how to be able to make a tough decision when it's not going to be popular. All that, it comes with leadership. You can't just think, well, gosh, I get that big corner office and I get paid a little bit more, so that's what I want. You can't look at it like that. That's maybe a side benefit. If that, really what you need to do is find a way you can grow yourself, be fulfilled, and help others. When you do that, you'll be one of the first people that the executive team will come up and say, Brian, we want to give you a shot at a director position, or we want to give you your first time shot at a CIO, right? Obviously, there's a process for that from an HR perspective, but for people to recommend you is a great feeling. That means you're doing something right.
That's very true. And, one of the other questions that you would have is, as you become a leader, you also need to build your brand. And this brand could be both social media, and it could be your physical self, right? When you walk into the room, what kind of brand you are projecting. So we have a question from one of our listeners on those lines, from Nikita Parmar. In a world where there are so many new and innovative blogs, vlogs, and podcasts coming up, how do you find the right path for us to build your personal brand? What's one takeaway you would have for her?
Sure. So everybody's different, and I'll hit the social media standpoint. So for me, I liked social media, and I didn't do it just for the let's let's have fun and talk about what we saw on, the comedy show last night, right? Mine was more to build a brand around myself so I could be ready for that next career move. But everybody, it's going to be different, and every platform is different. But what I can tell you is just be consistent. Have a little fun with it, but be professional. So I grew in about a 3-year period. I grew to about 60 to 70,000 followers in about a 3-year period. It was active. I was very deliberate on what I wanted to do, and it wasn't. You can't go into it thinking about, well, I want 1 million followers. That's great, but you're going to get one viral video out of about 10,000, right? And
Right.
So that can't be your end goal. Your end goal has to be, I want to build something that's quality that people can follow and be interested in, and have a little fun with it. That's what I would suggest. And then from a personality standpoint, when you walk into a meeting with your team, or you're going to give a presentation, or you walk in the boardroom, be authentic, be yourself. You're not there to be a Bill Gates or a Elon Musk, right? You're there to be yourself, be authentic, and have fun with it. I'm kind of a jokester, to be honest. Imagine me sitting in a boardroom with a bunch of executives and board members, and me on the professional side, of course, but I do tend to crack a joke here and there, and I like to bring the fun out in people. And if you've asked anybody that I've worked with, whether they reported to me or they were a peer of mine or I reported to them, they're going to say Brian was kind of a lot of fun. So that's what I'd like to say coming from Brian.
That's pretty cool, and that's your brand, right? People feel good about themselves when they are surrounded by amazing leaders like you, where they can be their authentic selves. So it's a
Yes.
ripple effect, is how I see it. And thank you, Nikita, for that wonderful question as well. Now, tell me this, Brian, when you're in the corner office, how do you see people around you, especially women in tech? What are some thoughts a CIO or a CTO has to be an ally and bring the other people along, and especially women?
Absolutely. So that's a great question, Priyanka, and I think it's very relevant and timely nowadays. Is equality is so big, is really, and I told you earlier on that I mentored a lot of people in my career, and I would say it was about a half and half, 50-50 mix to the women versus men that I mentored, and I'm very proud of that, to say that women and men are equal in every sense of the word. Obviously, whatever your belief system is, whether it's the universe or God or someone else, there's a reason why there's a man and a woman, obviously, but we both have that intelligence, that smart, the need to contribute back to society. So we're equal in every aspect. And so to me, mentoring a female or a male, or someone that came from another country, I think that's amazing to support. Regardless, I don't look at those things. I look at, how do I help this person grow and be able to become a leader and give back to society like I did. And so I believe that's so important. Again, regardless of your color, race, creed, or your background, we need to help each other out and build each other up as one human race. And that's the way I look at everything. And I'm proud to support the culture and diversity and inclusion across the globe.
That's pretty amazing to hear, especially coming from, a person like you, Brian, where you're looking at embracing diversity and equality. And that's the mindset shift a lot of organizations and leaders need to have. And I'm so glad you're one of the torchbearers for us.
Absolutely. I think it's important. And again, I'm helping those people that want to help and give back and grow themselves as well. Obviously, that's where my focus has been, but it's been great.
Thank you. And to our listeners, having known Brian for quite some time, he's very kind and a giving and a humble person, I should say. So thank you so much, Brian, for being that wonderful, cheerleader for a lot of us, and being an ally for women in tech. I think that's really admirable quality of yours.
Absolutely. Love it. And thank you for sharing.
All right. So we have another question from Janani Rangarajan. So being a leader, a lot of times uh, you have to do technical work, hands-on work in coding. What's your experience? Where do you spend your time?
Sure. So as a leader, you really are driving the bus. You've heard that that analogy before, right? It's true. You need to get the people on your team in the right seat on the bus. As soon as you can, and sometimes it takes a hard decision, but as soon as you can align and get those people in the right seats on the bus, you'll be able to spend more time focusing on some of those other things that you like to do or love to do, and or just getting your job done, right? But there is always that 20-80 rule. I would say 20%, you spend 80% on 20% of your staff. And if you're doing that consistently, it's time to look at, again, moving that person or persons into a different role, possibly. And if that doesn't work out, sometimes you have to say, hey, I don't think this is working out for either of us here at the organization. Let's try and figure out your exit strategy. So maybe you can find a place that that you feel fulfilled and happy at being there. But for the most part, I have a outstanding record of having not any turnover in long periods of times with multiple large teams. I'm very proud of that because I worked hard to get people on the right, seats in the bus. Because again, I mentioned earlier, if you have that level of trust as your foundation, you'll do very, very well as a leader, and you'll be able to move people around very easily.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Janani, for that great question as well. Now, we have a handful of listeners joining in, so I wanted to remind them, if you have a question for Brian, do put it out there through the chat box. And one lucky winner gets a free mentoring session with Brian himself. So please do that. Brian, what's the legacy that you want to leave behind when you look at your life from an outsider perspective?
Sure. And I don't want to sound like this is a cliche, but I definitely want to leave the world in a better place than when I found it. And the fact that I can give back and contribute to whether it's at a company, or whether it's at a community fundraiser or a community food drive, or just mentoring people, if I know I'm making it better, even if I could help one person become somebody that's going to be great and inspiring for many, many others, I feel like I've accomplished something. But so to keep it short, yes, leaving the place in a better spot than when I arrived.
That's always very thoughtful of you, thinking about what your brand is going to look like and the impact that you create to a lot of other wonderful people. So we really appreciate all the support that you provide to us. With that being said, we have a fun rapid fire round for you. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
All right. So you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the following, and let's try to keep it to one word if you can. Role model.
Leader. One word, huh? Yeah, this is great, but go ahead.
Do you have a specific role model in mind that you would like to share?
Well, I can give you one if right off the top of my head. I had a mentor role model who was the chief information officer for many years at Ascension Health, very large healthcare organization. And I learned a lot from him. And he believed in mentoring, but he was also big on diversity and inclusion. I think that was very helpful. But and I'll drop his name. He's you'll find him easily out there. He's a pretty big name, but his name is Mark Barner, and he was the CIO of Ascension Health for many, many years, and a great gentleman. Sorry, that wasn't one word.
It's always nice to know some of the great qualities of your mentors, because I believe that your bosses or your managers can have a real impact on your career. Mm-hmm. So I've had a personal experience with that. And, thanks to wonderful mentors like Mark, who make sure that, their mentors give back to the community as well.
Absolutely.
All right. What does happiness mean to Brian?
Say that again, Priyanka.
What does happiness mean to you?
Fulfillment. Again, just because you make that corner office, right? Fulfillment, I guess. Sorry, I'm trying to keep it to one word, but success and you don't feel fulfilled is really failure, as Tony Robbins would say. So I'd say fulfillment. And whenever I'm giving, I feel fulfilled.
That's amazing. What is one fun thing about Brian that's exclusive to our podcast listeners?
I'm a jokester. Well, I think I've already mentioned that, but yeah, I just have fun and engage with people. Fun. That's me, Brian.
That's amazing. One word to describe yourself.
Funny. Get to know me for 5 minutes, and yeah, you'll be laughing.
That's pretty cool. Thanks so much for that. And to our listeners who are tuning in, please do drop a question or a comment. We would love to hear your takeaways from this podcast and also win a free mentoring session with Brian. So you have a couple more minutes as we wrap up the show to get your chance to win an exclusive mentoring session with the funny and amazing leader, Brian. All right, Brian, how has your experience been on the podcast and why do you think people should listen to this?
Well, first of all, thank you, Priyanka, for having me on here. We were introduced and we both have shared airtime on each other's podcast now. So thank you. Your podcast is amazing. And I'll tell you, I've done 125 episodes now, but your podcast brings a lot of diversity, which mine does as well, but yours has video, which I want to get to that level, but mine's audio. But I would have to say your podcast is simply amazing. The format, the fact that you go live with your feed, and like I said, the videos I think is really puts it a notch above everybody else. And I've done a lot of podcasts, so I can tell you've got an amazing podcast. So the listeners right now, please follow. I think she's doing an amazing job.
Thank you so much, Brian, for those wonderful words. And for our listeners, again, do remember to subscribe to us. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe icon, as well as on Twitter at Pod Startup. You can see them on the screen. And we're also on LinkedIn. If you're watching the LinkedIn live, you can follow me, Priyanka Komala, as well as our Curryup Startup Podcast page. And it's a great community where you can learn and connect with my guests and also get some free exclusive giveaways, be it mentoring sessions, free books, and other wonderful ways to connect with the guests as well. All right, with that being said, it's time for a drum roll to figure out who our lucky winner is between Nikita and Janani to win a free mentoring session with you. So, Brian, here comes the tough question for you. Pick one winner, Nikita and Janani.
Gosh. I'll say Nikita.
Nikita? Awesome.
Yeah, I don't, again,
it's just a random pick. So,
okay. All right.
There you go. So Nikita, congratulations on winning a free mentoring session with Brian, and we'll connect you with Brian offline so you can go ahead with your mentoring session. And Janani, thanks for that great question as well. And feel free to connect with Brian and get his mentorship and advice, as you like.
And
how about that?
Just for fun, because again, this is how I feel. I always care about what people, they're feeling, right? And so if there's just two of them on the show, I'm going to throw in another mentoring session for your other guests as well. So please consider both of you having that opportunity with me. So thank you.
Thank you. That's so wonderful and gracious of you. So congratulations, Janani, and congratulations, Nikita, on winning the mentoring session. And that's the great aspect of all my guests. When I throw in a free mentoring session, most of the time we have multiple people, being able to take on that. And thanks to wonderful people like you, Brian, for their time and energy and investment. Sure.
Just next time when you have 100 guests, I don't know if I can do that, but no, this is great. I'd be happy to do it. And if you want to, again, I'm sure you'll share that information out so they can reach out to me. But yeah, I'm easily found out there on the internet. So
awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. What is one parting thought you can leave our listeners with?
I've learned a lot over my career, and I really like this message to go. Well, it goes to everybody, but especially the younger generation, is have patience, just have patience, and look for a mentor. I would say if I would have known half the things I know now when I was 21 years old, I think I would have been a lot further, done a lot of different things, and who knows. But I would say don't be afraid to ask. and don't be down because you get a no. But get out, find a mentor, someone that's going to help you grow your career. There's a ton of people out there that would love to help you grow your career. So again, that goes for any age group, but I'm looking to the younger generation just because I was there at one point and I struggled and I had to figure out a lot of things on my own.
That's wonderful advice, Brian. And I love the fact that you mentioned having that patience and persistence. That's something that is a great leadership quality as well.
Yes, thank you.
That's awesome, Brian. Thanks so much for your time and efforts. And we really appreciate the wonderful nuggets of wisdom you've shared on our Curryup Startup podcast today. So kudos to you on all the wonderful work. And I wish you all the very best for all your endeavors and look forward to your amazing podcast as well going forward.
Absolutely. And Priyanka, thanks again for having me, and love to be back on the show sometime. But yes, thank you again.
Awesome. I'm going to have a couple of quick closing comments. Nikita says, thank you so much for your time. And do you have anything to share? All right, that says it all. Nikita, thank you so much. Janani, thank you so much for those wonderful questions. And to all our listeners who've been watching the show as well, this is our 54th episode with Curryup Startup Podcast and our wonderful Brian Thomas. And this is your host, Priyanka Komala, signing off from Curryup Startup Podcast, a podcast to spotlight world-class Asian entrepreneurs, leaders, C-suite executives, and people who are allies to the Asian community, just like Brian, who can inspire us with their personal journey and wisdom. Until another episode with another interesting guest that's going to happen next week, do continue to tune in to all our episodes. And I should say, actually, we have an episode coming in tomorrow, which is focused more on data science. So stay tuned to that episode as well. And we would love your support on all our social media platforms, be it YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and your favorite podcast streaming platforms. So thanks so much and have a wonderful rest of the day.